It is day 3 of the president's 9-day trip to Asia, and today it is stop number 2, Singapore, where the president will take part in an Asian-Pacific meeting on world trade and sit in on a meeting of leaders of Southeast Asian nations. After Singapore, the president travels to China and South Korea before returning to D.C. on the 20th. For more now on the president's trip so far, NBC's Mike Vaquera is at the White House. And with another good morning to you, my friend. What is the president trying to accomplish on this trip, Mike?
Well, he's talking to some of our closest allies and economic competitors in Japan, in many of the Asia-Pacific Rim nations, in China and in Korea. He started this trip off in Japan, and overnight here on the East Coast, it was midday in Japan. He gave a speech in Tokyo, serving as sort of the keynote address. He talked about China. He talked about an era of cooperation and not competition for spheres of influence with China. China, of course, holds a lot of American debt. We've all talked a lot in the last few days about that debt and the American deficit, a large portion of which China is actually financing. China is obviously on the rise politically and economically, but the president trying to reach out now and increase the ties of cooperation. In Japan, he also talked in that speech about the threat posed by North Korea and their continual flouting of nuclear international agreements.
For decades, North Korea has chosen a path of confrontation and provocation, including the pursuit of nuclear weapons. We will not be cowed by threats, and we will continue to send a clear message through our actions and not just our words. North Korea's refusal to meet its international obligations will lead only to less security, not more.
Now, the president, as you said, Alex, has just arrived in Singapore for the keynote or the centerpiece of this trip. It is the APEC conference, an annual conference of Pacific Rim nations centered on the economy. He did record one of those internet radio addresses. We see them every Saturday. And the topic was the investigation at Fort Hood into the killing of 13 servicemen and women by Major Nidal Hasan. He warned Congress, did the president, among other things in that address, not to start their own investigation, because he fears that would interfere with the military investigation and the investigation by federal authorities. So a lot on the president's plate, obviously. As you mentioned, he's going to be there until late next week after visiting China, South Korea, then returning home, Alex.
Okay, Mike Vaquera there at the White House for us. Thanks, Mike.
Certainly.